Welcome to the Learning Lab. This is Volume 7. My name is Roman Garcia and I'm a physical therapist. Today what I'm going to be discussing is something that's kind of basic in the rehab world, but I think it's a concept or it's an idea or it's a practice that's still a little bit confused because of the master idea that we're all functioning in insofar as what I'm about to discuss it's all inclined towards one side of the spectrum. And what I'm referring to is when somebody comes into your clinic and they have a trauma, whether it's of a acute or a couple of days or of a chronic nature, what should be used, cold or heat? The majority of therapists or the majority of medical practitioners, they tend always to be inclined to use cold therapy, no matter the duration of the trauma, when they see the patient and when the trauma occurred. The ice, for some reason, is the favorite modality that's used in the majorities of trauma. So today what I'm going to show you is one of those examples where most therapists would probably, if this patient would come to them, the first modality that they would use when they would have to pick between heat and cold is cold. And what I'm going to show you today in this volume, Volume 7, is why that is incorrect. So today what we're going to be discussing is, should we use hot or should we use cold? And what I will say right off the bat is that only in very acute circumstances should cold be the modality that's used. In the majority of trauma, after a couple of days, hot should be the modality that's used. And I'm going to show you a patient who very graciously has allowed her to be part of this video. We've covered her face just for privacy reasons. But this is a patient who about a week ago fell. She slipped on a sidewalk. There was an uneven threshold and she fell. And she fell on her side and she developed quite a bruise or an ecchymosis. And I'm going to show you the trauma. And again, this happened about a week ago. But if this patient would come to most rehab facilities, she would be prescribed cold to use in the clinic. The therapist will use cold in the clinic, and the therapist will probably recommend to the patient to use cold at home. And I'm going to show you biologically, physiologically, why that is incorrect. All right, so if you allow me, I'm going to come right over here. I'm going to show you what the trauma looks like. This is patient A, and this is what happened to her. She fell on her side. You can still see the bruising right over here. Still well distinguishable. She has this large mass, this large collection of just hardened, it's a viscous formation from the trauma itself. This is all blood debris, tissue debris. And it's all accumulated right here. It's encapsulated itself basically. It hasn't mineralized, but it's on its way to mineralizing. It's very hard. I'm pressing on it. I can barely indent it. But there's still some pliability here. So the tissue is still viscous, but it is encapsulated. You can see how I can move it. Now, this patient will come to a clinic, and the first thing that the therapist would probably want to do here is put cold on it, because they're thinking, oh, this tissue is inflamed. If the tissue is inflamed, we need to put cold on it to reduce the inflammation. I will tell you that is not what's happening here. Is it inflamed? Is there inflammatory process in this tissue? Most likely, but that's not really what you're dealing with here. You're dealing here with a tissue whose cells and the cellular debris is stagnant. And I'm going to show you what stagnation looks like now. But you can see, I can move it. You can see the bruising. But this tissue is not inflamed. That is not what you're dealing with. You're not trying to reduce inflammation here. What you're trying to create is biological flow to flow through these tissue planes again. You cannot do that with ice. Ice does not do that. Ice creates stagnation. You already have stagnation here. What you need is energy to move through the tissue planes. You need nutrients to move through the tissue planes. You need blood to move through the tissue planes. Ice will not do that, but heat will. Now, let me show you what I mean about stagnation. This is a thermal imaging device. What it's going to show us is the actual biological activity in the tissue. Red is biological activity. White is basically tissue that's inert. There's not much biological activity there. Red means blood running through it and generating a thermal signature. This machine picks it up. Now, I don't know if you can see, if you folks out there can see this, but I put an X right where the tissue is encapsulated. I got my finger right on it. You can see how white it is. If you were to put cold on this, it will stay white for a very long time, for longer than what it should be. What you want is, you want little pokes of this red all over the tissue. That is what's normal. In this patient's case, we would know what normal is. We would get a thermogram reading on the other side, but obviously because we're trying to protect her privacy, we're not going to do that. But we did it before, and what it demonstrated was there was red all over the tissue on this side right over here. It does not look like this. But you can see she has patches of red. This patch of red right here is the circumsection of the actual bruising itself. I'm running my finger right over the red. And you can see, I'm going to take the thermal imaging device also, you see where that red is. It's right, again, I'll go right over it again. I'll take my finger, I'll take the fluor out. It's right where the circular bruising starts. This is about the only area that she has biological flow going through it. But in the area that needs to be addressed, which is this encapsulated portion right over here, you can see how white it is. If you were to put cold on this, and you will continue to put cold on this area right over here, this will only get worse. You need to introduce an energy into this tissue to reestablish the flow of matter and energy through the tissue planes. Cold will not do that. You need to apply heat on this area over here. It's kind of like a paradox, because if you touch it, it is hot. A little bit hot, but that heat is not the type of heat that's produced by an inflammatory process. It's produced by stagnation. Stagnation, there is no nutrients flowing through the tissue. So basically this region right here is cut off from the general circulation. And you can see it in this thermal imaging very clearly. Again, I'll put my finger right on the area that needs to be addressed. It's white. Now, this is what we're going to do with this patient. Now you can come. I'm going to describe what I'm going to do with her. It's very easy. Again, what I'm trying to do is just introduce energy into this area. I'm going to do it through using two modalities, and two modalities only. I'm going to put simple moist heat on it. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to introduce a different type of energy, an energy that works deeper down biologically, which is the ultrasound. I can also use electrical stim if I wish. But today what I'm going to do is I'm going to put heat and I'm going to use ultrasound. And that's all I'm going to do. And then we're going to have the patient come back to the clinic. And then we're going to just see with our own eyes the progression of using those two types of energies on this tissue. I'm not going to use ice. The instinct is to put ice on it, but I'm not going to use ice. I'm going to use heat on it. So that's what we're going to do, and then we're going to bring her back, and then we're going to do the next video, and then we're just going to follow her progression. Again, this is going to be probably 2 or 3 videos using this patient. We may have to go a little bit more, we may not. I really do not believe so. I think 2 or 3 treatments, and we're going to see a major improvement in the quality of this tissue. So until next time, we'll see each other again on YouTube. Thank you.